Hi everyone, welcome to the third section of our chapter on race and ethnicity. In this section we'll look at theories of race and ethnicity. We'll start looking at functionalism and conflict theory, followed by SI or symbolic interactionism, and then we'll conclude with culture prejudice. So, functionalism. How do functionalists examine race? So, according to functionalism, and if you may recall, functionalists see society as made up of interrelated parts that work together. They depend on each other to coexist. It's like a human body in which you have different, you have arms, legs, nose, ears, and so on. You need all different parts of your body in order to function fully well in our society. So similarly, right? Society needs school, family, religion, government, law, and so on, working together cooperatively in order for society to be healthy and progress. So let's apply this perspective to racial inequality. So according to functionalism, racial inequality is functional. So in particular, right, for the dominant group, all right, like with slavery, for the dominant group, racial inequality has a function in which the dominant group would have control and authority over the minority group, in this case blacks, who were slaves, in order to ensure that work is done and that society, in this American society, will enjoy economic prosperity, right, and that it is stable and that everyone knows what their jobs are and what they're supposed to do, and so on. So racial inequality in that sense also increases group solidarity among in-group members, because if you are of the dominant group, you know where you stand and how you act as master. So let's think about the point where we used to have slavery in the United States. And then if you were a slave, you know that you are supposed to act a certain way. In this case, you work for your masters, and that you have a sense of awareness and connection with other slaves, right? Much closer than with your masters. So, functionalism also, however, this is a big also see racial inequality as dysfunctional, because it costs society a lot of money, time, and effort in order to maintain racial inequality. It destroys human relationships, and so in this way, racial inequality is not that healthy at all. So as you can see through the functionalist perspective, you see racial inequality as functional as well as dysfunctional. What about conflict theory? Remember conflict theory in the beginning of our class, I gave you an analogy in which conflict theory is like a league of sports teams in which different teams are competing with each other in order to be number one. Number one, if you're on top, you want to stay on top. You don't want to move down. On the other hand, all the other teams want to replace you. So conflict theory, again, seeing society as made up of different groups, particularly at least two groups, right? The dominant and the minority groups competing with each other for power and in particular access to limited resources. So according to conflict theory, the white ruling class oppresses other races, right? White ruling class is on top, they're number one, and so they want to stay on top. They make sure that they engage in racist practices that they would stay on top. So racist practices such as Jim Crow laws that supposedly ensure that blacks and whites were segregated from each other, and supposedly they were equal, right? The reality is that's not the case. Okay? Or they also engage in gerrymandering as well as voter suppression. All of this occur in part to make sure that the white ruling class will stay on top, will be the dominant group, and other races are oppressed. So Patricia Hill Collins, a very well-known scholar, argues that in understanding oppression in our society, particularly racism, it's very important to understand the intersectionality of of different social attributes, such as race, class, gender, sexual orientation, and many, many other attributes, seeing how they are connected to each other and influence each other. So, for example, while blacks in general face a lot of more, racism and marginalization in our society, but the experiences of black women are different from black men, right? How black men experience racism is very different from black women, and as well as class, right? Middle class black women who experienced racism or sexism or classism differently from, let's say, an upper class black woman. Okay? So that's the idea of intersectionality. Okay, what about SI, or symbolic interactionism? How do they analyze race and ethnicity? So according to them, as you may recall, they see labels, right? Labeling is important, and how labels come about through meanings, come through interactions in order to convey certain meanings among different actors in our society. And class, I gave you the analogy of theater, right? Where for SI, society is like a theater where everyone's performing different roles and conveying certain shared meanings in order to understand each other. So, okay, let's apply SI to race and ethnicity. So according to SI, race and ethnicity are strong symbols. And according to many of them, many symbolic interactionalists, the symbols of race and not race itself are what lead to racism. So the ways, for example, images of different races are conveyed in popular media might, are very, very powerful, and oftentimes emotionally linked with stereotypes. So through the media and the images that of different races are represented in the media, we learn prejudice, right, about different racial groups, and that consequently, might be related to stereotypes, as stereotypes can be used to justify prejudice and discrimination, and in a way can lead to self-fulfilling prophecy, in which stereotypical behavior and the ways in which we stereotype certain people might in turn, because we label them a certain way, right, might in turn encourages them to act according to the stereotype that are put onto them. So that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Okay. All right. So last but not, so here I've included a short video for you just to demonstrate that how black protests and white riots are represented in the media, and that in turn shape our stereotypes of different races, black and white, and potentially impact our prejudice and ideas about different groups of people. All right. Last but not least is the culture of prejudice idea, which is a theory that prejudice is embedded in our culture. It's everywhere, such as through advertisement, movies, and through these mediums, right, through our culture and the mediums that convey our culture, we internalize them, and as a result, act toward different people accordingly based on these images and different representation that perpetuate our culture. All right, so that ends our third section.